right, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to Design Meets and over your lunch hour, assuming you eat lunch at 12 o'clock. I'm Ian Chalmers and I'm an experienced designer with Pivot Design Group here in Toronto and the founder of Design Meets. In an important step towards truth and reconciliation, and as a member of Canadian society, we acknowledge the traditional lands that our studio occupies. We are grateful for these lands and have the utmost respect and recognition of Indigenous peoples, their circular practices, and ways of knowing. Our path forward is together. Since we started Design Meets in 2010, it was established as sort of a gathering point, a community platform for exchanging ideas, getting inspiration, and collaborating with our peers to find meaningful ways to put design and its transformative power to work. At our last event on March 31st, we looked into design and the circular economy. This is not yet quite a familiar concept in Canada for everyone, but we were fortunate to have an expert from Europe, Thibaut Wallet from Luxembourg, as a featured speaker. Thibaut is not only extremely knowledgeable in circular economy subject matter, but also very passionate advocate for innovation and transition to a more regenerative and resilient economy. You could say it was a circular economy 101 information session. Hopefully this event will help to fill in any other knowledge gaps. If you'd like more information on this event, be sure to visit our website at designmeets.ca, or if you want more information on circular economy, you can order this book. All right, that brings me to the event today, which is on design and the circular economy part 2. For the next hour, we'll be talking to people who have put the circular economy in motion and actually applied circular frameworks to their business models. Canada's economy is way out of step with our natural circular world. We extract resources, we use them once, and then all that creativity, all that value is tossed away and lost. We need to adapt, reinvest what we're taking out and become more sustainable. We need to transform this existing model of take, make, waste. In Canada, we consume materials, energy, and water at one of the highest rates in the world, compared with the Netherlands, where 30% comes from materials that are recycled and reused. We need a better plan for managing these precious natural resources, how we make and use products, and what we do with the materials afterwards. Design has the opportunity to take a lead role to create products that are more sustainable, ones that are more desirable and needed, durable and long-lasting, repairable and easy to fix, reusable over and over again, adaptable and modular. We are very fortunate. One of our speakers, Dihan, has offered a coupon off of your first order. So very gracious of you to offer that as a code for our attendees. And you can try spent goods at any of these online food delivery partners. And we will post this afterwards in the blog for your convenience. All right, today we're very fortunate to have 3 guest speakers who are entrepreneurs, subject matter experts, and have applied circular economy models to their businesses. While embracing the circular economy will require system level change, our speakers today represent a real world pragmatic approach to integrating circularity and innovation into their business models. Today's format gives our 3 speakers 5 to 10 minutes to present, followed by a Q&A. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat and we will try to get to them in our conversation. So grab your coffee, your tea, your lunch in your reusable containers and get comfortable. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dihan Chandra. Dihan, you started your first social enterprise, Organic Lifestyle, to focus on promoting non-toxic alternatives for homes, such as organic pillows, linens, and mattresses. While researching whether your dog's poop could be used to generate enough power for your house instead of having to pick it up, he was inspired to create solutions that could generate revenue from plastic pollution, confirming his belief that practical solutions for reducing waste and regenerating profits are within our grasp. One night at his local pub, Dihan wondered out loud what we've all thought about and too shy to ask, maybe this happens over a drink, what happens to all that grain used to make beer? And after learning that most of the spent grain, especially from smaller breweries, ends up in landfills, he launched the Spent Goods Company. So welcome, Dehan, over to you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you to Design Meats for this opportunity to talk about a little bit about my business. I'm just going to quickly share some slides, and hopefully that will work. Great, thank you. My name is Dehan, and again, thank you for this opportunity to talk about my business and for your time to sort of learn a little bit more about the circular economy that we're so passionate about. At Spent Goods, our tagline is delicious foods that help reduce climate change. And I wanted to provide you with a quick overview on how and why we do what we do. So why spent? So not all food waste is equal. For instance, in the brewing industry, they use barley grains to make beer. And this is what is typically referred to as spent grains. And in larger organizations, they work with industrial dairy farms that actually can take the tons and tons of spent grains that are produced and use it as animal feed. However, in the more urban settings, with working with craft breweries, they don't necessarily produce enough of those spent grains to justify being trucked out a couple of hours out of the city. So they are looking for more alternative ways of dealing with it. The reality is that it's been estimated about 16 million kilos of brewery grains are disposed in Ontario. When any organic waste ends up in landfill, it ends up breaking down, releasing greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change, as we know. So our business is around, what if we took those barley grains, for instance, just diverted it and actually used it to feed people instead? So if we take that same amount that ends up disposed on an annual basis, we could actually feed every Ontarian 20 loaves of bread every year. So that's what we're trying to do here today. So we've been fortunate to be voted one of the top 5 breads in Toronto. How we do this is by working with local food manufacturers who are best at what they do. And essentially we connect the dots. We take the different products that are available in excess and we connect them with local businesses that can transform it. And together we've been able to, our work has been sort of featured on CBC by working with barley grains as one of the viable food products that we work with. Barley is low in sugar as a result of going through that beer manufacturing process and still retains its high fiber and protein. So we're able to recover that nutrition as opposed to it being disposed. And again, because we're diverting it, as I mentioned earlier, and it not ending up in landfill, we're able to actively contribute to reducing greenhouse gases that would have resulted had it gone through the typical traditional process. And we're based in Ontario. Yes, we are in Ontario, but we upcycle primarily in Toronto. And we see ourselves as a sort of a proof of concept of how, by working together, we can improve the local economy and stimulate the circular economy. So how do we do this? So step 1 is we provide the logistics to take output from one business and then provide it to one of the transformer partners. So in this example here, we take the output from a brewery, which is the spent grains, and instead we then provide it to a bakery who then turns it into bread and it doesn't end up in landfill. And then the second step is we offer sales and marketing support. So we will work with local grocery stores, food delivery companies that are online, farmers markets to sort of find a market for these new upcycled or what we call spent goods. So a real good example is we work very closely on the West End with Henderson Brewing, who provides us with the grain. We provide the logistics of getting that grain to our different food transformers. So 2 examples here. One is Bell's Bakery. The other one is a bagel house, Bagel on Time. And essentially these 2 organizations will upcycle the barley grains into the different baked goods that we then sell. Next slide shows these are the different products that with these 2 businesses that we're able to produce, everything from burger buns, pretzels, sourdough, baguettes, all these kind of great stuff that we make available today. Our products are found in different customers, retail locations. It could on the west end, say Sweet Potato, to the east end to Big Carrot. We are found in online delivery companies like FoodShare, Mama Earth, and even smaller co-ops like the Scarborough Market and zero waste companies like Bear Market. To date, we've just over 3 years, we've been able to feed 134,000, essentially sold 134,000 loaves of bread. Because we're using spent grain and reducing it, preventing it from going to landfill, we've been able to offset the equivalent of 5.2 tons of carbon dioxide. And to give you a sense of that, if we got into a single passenger car and from Toronto and then headed in one direction, we've already made it halfway around the earth in terms of the amount of carbon that would have taken. So we've been able to offset that amount. We work closely with 26 different local businesses that resell our products. And along with the staff at Spent Goods and the bakery, the amount of volume that we give to the bakery partners who make our products, we support the equivalent of 10 full-time jobs. And so this is a question we get asked a lot. As a consumer, one of the things that I would like to hopefully make a case, have made a case, is that if you consider a product, whether it's your loaf of bread that's equally priced on the at a grocery store, the value proposition here is if they're both delicious products, if they both priced equally, but one basically helps to reduce climate change and create local jobs. That's what Spent Goods sort of is hoping. Our theory of change is that customers, when presented with those options, will pick one in which also helps to reduce climate change and local jobs. So not reduce local jobs, but create local jobs. So we're hopeful that this resonates with you, and I'm here for the rest of the presentation to obviously talk about any questions beyond that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jihan. Kelly and I were saying that I think that's the first time someone's shared on their phone. So that was very innovative, just doing it like that. So, so thank you. All right. Up next, Kelly, I'm just gonna do a little intro. We're very fortunate to have Kelly Drennan. Kelly's from the fashion industry and is a thought leader and disruptor who's committed to creating change to fashion. In 2007, she founded Fashion Takes Action to create a better, more sustainable world for her 2 daughters. At FTA, she identifies the barriers to sustainability for both the industry and consumers and comes up with strategies to overcome them. She's the co-author of Canada's Textile Recycling Feasibility Report and now leads a group of national stakeholders in a mechanical textile recycling pilot. That's quite a mouthful. Welcome, Kelly, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian, and to the Design Meets team for having me here today. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the fashion industry, specifically around making fashion circular and all of the waste that is generated through our clothing. So I don't want to be, remiss of the other major impacts that the fashion industry has, such as, impacts on human rights and labor. Of course, there's a lot of water consumption and pollution that happens, the use of toxic chemicals, carbon emissions, and then of course, waste. So these are the kind of 5 big buckets that we talk about often when we speak about the impacts. But for today's purposes, we're just going to focus on waste. So first of all, as consumers of clothing, we do have a responsibility. We buy 60% more clothes today than we did 20 years ago, and we keep our garments for half as long. You might wonder why. Well, fast fashion is partly or largely to blame for this. And if you're not already familiar with fast fashion, it's just like fast food. It's cheap, it's accessible, and it's really not good for you. So with fast fashion companies like Shein, which we are now calling ultra fast fashion, they're putting out 3,000 new styles a day. So you can imagine what used to be considered fast fashion, which H&M and Zara, which they put out hundreds a week, we're now talking about 3,000 styles a day. And so of course, this overproduction leads to overconsumption, to the point where it's 92 million tons of clothing that's ending up in landfills every year around the world. And that's the equivalent of a garbage trucks full of textiles being landfilled or incinerated every second of every day, according to Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So when it comes to consumers and empowering us all with sort of, solutions for this, we came up with the 7 Rs. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I will be using some references to these 7 Rs from examples from the industry. So just to sort of give it the linear economy versus circular economy context in fashion, in this case, we're taking the raw materials like petroleum to make our synthetic clothing, or we're harvesting cotton if we're talking about cotton garments. And then obviously making those garments, which in many cases in the fashion industry are designed for obsolescence. We're then buying the stuff, using it, wearing it, washing it, you name it, and that actually has quite a bit of an impact. And then we typically throw it away when we no longer want it. So in a circular economy, we're trying to keep those materials in use for as long as possible. And design is a really key element here, designing for circularity. So creating longer lasting and durable, easier to recycle pieces, looking at things like zero waste pattern making and production. And then of course, getting back into, once it's been used, channeling it through repair, resale, and then eventually as a last resort, recycling. So I mentioned before a lot of this overproduction. Well, it's to the tune of 100 billion items of clothing made every year by the fashion industry, and it's only set to increase. If we don't do anything right now, and it sort of remains the status quo in fashion, by 2050, we'll be responsible for 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So a huge contributor to the climate change for sure. And as I mentioned before, design, obviously a super key element. Things even like what the fabric is that's being used to design a garment. Is it a monomaterial? Is it 100% polyester or 100% cotton, instead of having it be 50-50 poly-cotton blend? Because all of this actually matters at the end of the life of the garment. Other things like accessories, how many buttons and zippers, and what are those made of? And do they need to be removed afterwards if we're talking about recycling? So those are also design considerations. And then of course, durability. So are you designing it from a durable perspective where it's going to be long lasting, but that also, factors in things like trends and having more timeless classic designs. We're starting to see some, brands and retailers now are doing these reuse schemes where they have in-store take-back programs. You can bring back any garment. It doesn't have to just be their own brand. We are seeing upcycling collaborations happening. There's one between Converse actually and a Canadian company called Bank and Vogue, where they're upcycling. They're providing the denim for uppers on an upcycled Chuck Taylor, which is really cool. And then we're also starting to see brands like even H&M Canada, for example, has launched Rewear, which is a whole resale platform. And then of course, the last resort is recycling, because we clearly want to keep our clothes in use for as long as possible. But at the end of the day, they're going to get to a point where nobody wants them anymore and they really have no value. And so that's where we're looking at recycling. I'm just going to move quickly into sort of what we're doing to address this particular issue. As Ian mentioned, I am the co-author of Canada's Textile Recycling Feasibility Report, where we looked at a few different, we broke it down into a few different parts, where we looked at the volume, the composition, the sources of textile waste, the different categories of waste. So is it clothing versus household textiles, for example? We did a technical review of automated sortation versus manual sortation, which is typically what we do now by hand, which makes it way more expensive. And then we also looked at chemical and mechanical recycling technologies. And then finally, we provided 22 recommendations to the federal government to support a new textiles economy. One of which was to fund a mechanical textile recycling pilot. We have the infrastructure in Canada now to be mechanically recycling textiles. Chemical recycling might be the holy grail, where you can get garment to garment recycling, but it's not widely available and it could be 10 years. From our report, we know that there's 500,000 tons of our post-consumer textiles in landfills in Canada every year. So this is a problem we need to address right away. And mechanical recycling of textiles, typically it's downcycled. It's been made into insulation or under padding and seen as having a lower value rather than a higher value. And so what we wanted to demonstrate through our pilot was that we could create a consumer-facing, aesthetically pleasing end product that has a decent retail value and therefore proving the business case for this. And so in this particular case, we created a supply chain of, or recycling supply chain. We worked with Canadian Tire and their Sport Chek stores to do in-store collection. We specifically tried to get 100% polyester tops that didn't have any spandex and other accessories in them. And I should mention this was funded by ECCC, and it was through their plastics agenda. So hence the focus for us on synthetics and trying to solve for synthetics. We then worked with Goodwill, who sorted and cleaned the garments, removed all the metals, and then delivered it off to our shredding partner, which was JazzTex, where it got shredded and then sent to Alcogen, where it got needle punched and made into a felt. It's currently in manufacturing, but we've decided on a laundry hamper. And this laundry hamper will be in stores, Canadian Tire stores, by fall, winter of this year. There's just a snapshot of the in-store bins that we had. This is a bit of the process, what it looked like when it got cleaned and baled and then sent off to be shredded. And then this is the machinery that they use to felt the materials. And there's the end product. And then alongside our pilot, it was really important for us that, we demonstrated that we could do this, that it could be replicated and scaled. So we wanted to bring through a group of stakeholders who are really invested in this topic and who are, could basically have this really deep learning experience and come along this journey with us. And so these are the partners who did that. And we're excited that some of them are already now thinking about replicating the pilot and coming up with their own end product that would be suitable for their customers and their markets. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Kelly. That was you went through a lot in a short amount of time. So, and we know that there was a lot more that went into that. So we'll come back to you with some questions for sure. All right, Scott. Finally, Scott Morrison. Scott works in the food and beverage sector. He's dedicated to taking reusable packaging into the mainstream to show how the circular economy has all the conveniences for consumers, but also reduces carbon, water use, and waste. Scott is the partner for development Canada with Muse, which is a digital reusable packaging system that provides free and convenient reusable takeaway containers to consumers. He is also the co-founder of Dream Zero, a social enterprise that develops reusable systems for live events. Remember those live? I mean, this is technically a live event, but live in-person events. So over to you, Scott.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. And as I start to share my screen, let me just say, wow, I'm like on stage here with Kelly Drennan and Dehan. These two are like, they inspire me. They're doing an incredible job in their area of expertise. And like, Toronto's lucky to have these two. These two have been on their mission for a long time. And I'm so proud of both of them and like so excited to see that both of them are really hitting their stride, and they both have got incredible businesses and projects on the go that, yeah, it's a true honor to be up here with them. And go Toronto. That's pretty awesome. All right, now let's get into me. Yes, back in 2017, my co-founder and I, Brian Diamond, he also was a founder of the Toronto Tool Library. We started Dream Zero, which served reusable cups and containers for events primarily. We were dabbling in restaurants for a while and private clubs. And when the pandemic hit, we traversed into takeout. Everybody was doing takeout. So we started with coffee cups. And what we did was we looked around the world at what programs were the most successful and had the most promising teams and tech. And we found Muse. Muse was founded in Singapore and is also currently in Hong Kong and Toronto. A few pilot projects in other places, but primarily that's where the markets are. It is a app-based borrowing system. So basically, well, let me just get into that. It's like we say it's like the library, but for reusable cups and containers. So let's just skip through a few of these slides and get to this one. This one sort of shows you the overall structure of how it works. So basically, you download the app and then you can take out a cup. You just press borrow on your app and you scan the QR on the cup or the container, and then that basically belongs to you. You have that cup or container for up to 30 days. You can then return it at any participating location. We've got over 25 locations right now. We will have over 50 by the end of July, as soon as my next cups come. A little bit about that later. And then we've got, so then when you return your cup, then that venue washes it and then is able to be reused again, taken out by someone else. Our app has gone through a few different changes in the last year. You can now return on behalf of your friends. We're going to be having a batch scan feature launching in the near future, where basically you're going to be able to take out as many as you want in one go. Right now, we do have unlimited borrows, and there's no cost to the consumer at all. We started off with being a $5 a month service for unlimited borrows, but we've gone away with that. We charge the cafes and the restaurants and the farmers markets. So the customer can really just sit back and enjoy their beverage in a insulated coffee cup or their food in a stainless steel container. So because this is called Design Meets, obviously we got to be talking about design. So I'm going to just touch a little bit about our current cups. These are a double wall stainless steel cup with polypropylene lid and a silicone strip to seal that lid on. So the reason why we chose these materials is because they're readily recyclable in Canada, except for the silicone strip. We are working with an American company, however, to recycle silicone. However, we need a huge volume to actually get accepted by them, and the cost to get it over the border is huge too. Governments don't like other countries sending them trash unless they're paying a lot of money for it, which is good, very good. However, it makes recycling of certain materials very difficult to do. Polypropylene, though, this is a rigid plastic. It is food safe. Because we maintain ownership over these cups and these containers, then we can essentially sell this material. So we want the most durable materials. We want the most recyclable materials, so that in the end, we can make money off of that when we sell it, and or we control the supply chain, the feeder stock, into new items, which we are working with manufacturers locally to figure that out. Some promising things will be released about that probably within the next couple months. So another design aspect for these cups is no moving parts. The reason why is because they are very difficult to wash between. You can imagine any kind of mechanism that allows you to totally close off a cup and open up the lid. It's very tricky to clean in between that mechanism, and definitely we want the sanitation of our cups and our containers. All of our items is number one for us. COVID has really brought that to light, and however, it was always an issue even prior to COVID, and so we want to make sure that they're easy to wash for staff within a commercial dishwasher setup, and yeah, so no moving parts. And then like I said, 99% recyclable at the end of life by weight. Silicone's pretty light, so it makes that number seem high, but it's hard to find something that seals that is not silicone. So we're the reusable sector is kind of stuck with silicone for a little while, which is why we're trying to find a solution to recycle it at end of life. So we're moving on to a different style of cup. So this black cup worked very well in Singapore and Hong Kong, but they were not using detergents with alcohols and other chemicals in it that are seen as eco-friendly. However, they are effectively also paint strippers. And so we have begun to see some marks, some fading and some watermarks on the black finish of our cups. We have experimented with different kinds of finishes, and it's a little tricky to find the one that works the best. So we're actually just going straight to silver. That's why we have the silver food container as well, which I'll jump into in just a second. But again, this is a double wall stainless steel cup. It keeps your coffee nice and warm, 90% recyclable by weight at the end of life. Again, we're going for a 100% silicone lid here, one material. It's very easy to clean, lasts a very long time, very durable. And again, we're working on that recyclable solution for its end of life. These are a little bit more dent resistant as well. They don't stain. And then also one of the things that we're changing, which isn't reflected within this photograph, but you look quickly at my camera feed, our QR currently is on the bottom of the cup. We'll be moving that to the side of the cup. Reason being is because we're working with a few apps like Ritual, for example, where you're able to order ahead of time and you come into the cafe and your drink is already served. Well, right now you're having to lift up the cup and scan underneath. When that coffee is full, there's potential for spillage and we don't want that. So we scan from the side now. That's going to be launching within the next month when our new cups get here. So with our food containers, these had arrived a little over a month ago. We're very slowly rolling these out. We've gone with a clip lid. The reason why we wanted a clip lid is because it keeps the content in. A lot of the silicone lids don't, because of the design of the containers, they don't seal tight enough to prevent the lid from actually falling off when it's tipped over. So we wanted to make sure that we prevented that. So we have the clip lid, which seals nice and tight, keeps the heat in nice. Again, no moving parts. Now they bend, but they don't slide over each other. And these bendable parts, polypropylene is very durable. It allows for it to bend repeatedly. So it is long lasting. And yeah, we're very excited about the design of these. It's very simple. It's very familiar with a lot of people, but it's a tried and tested design. Non-staining, QR location on the side. And then let me just skip over to a little bit about the design of our system. So we have decided to do a decentralized system, which basically the circles on the right-hand side when you're looking at the screen there, they show in the center, they show the wash, the return, and the access point. Those are essentially our cafes or our restaurants, right? And where consumers, the orangish color, they can access the cups and containers at any of those locations and return at any of those locations. In a centralized model, it's basically the same. You can access the cups and containers at where you purchase them, and usually you can return them at those same locations as well. With a centralized system, those are then collected and brought to a centralized place to wash and then redistributed after. We've decided to go with a decentralized system where each restaurant and cafe washes themselves. They already have these dishwashers. They're highly efficient already. And if you're returning there, then they're turned around right away. Then we actually don't need even as much inventory as what would be required with a centralized system. And also, I can't help but think of it again from that library analogy, where could you imagine returning a library book and then it is not actually returned at that library, it's picked up and brought to another place and then returned and then redistributed? It seems grossly inefficient. And yeah, we're excited to really be pushing this model of the tiny circles and trying to make it as convenient as possible. And I'm pretty sure I went over my time.
Well, that's because you're passionate about what you do, and this is your life, right? So it's great to have
Oh, this is life, Ian.
Excellent. Well, let's take some questions now, and but I'll start out just on that note too, Scott. I think it was very gracious of you to kudos to the speaking group here and for Toronto in particular. It is great to have some of this grassroots homegrown initiatives happening here for any of you. This is a challenge. I mean, I can't imagine starting a business is hard enough, but even starting a circular business and sort of having some sort of behavior change happen. How difficult has that been? Maybe Dihan, what was it like for you starting? This was a great idea. It came out of fermenting innovation, let's say, at the pub, and then you made it happen. I mean, a lot of it comes from you, right, as an individual, as entrepreneurs. But how was it in starting your business from scratch? There's another good one, scratch.
Yeah, I would say it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, to be honest. Like I think the main thing that I focused on was, even though I'm dealing with food waste, I don't mention food waste because I don't want the association that you're eating something out of the garbage, which is never the case. We are just working with businesses that simply dispose of it because it's not part of their core business. So what we do is we'll physically go there once they've finished the particular product, take it as any other in a very food safe manner. But I just, from an imagery perspective, I don't mention food waste. And I think we talk about food byproducts and surplus and leftovers, which people can relate and understand, and they don't have that connotation. And then I guess for me to get into this sort of business, I think it was just more along the lines like, this makes sense to me. This is how the earth, if at all, operates this way in terms of constantly repurposing different things. Like nothing is ever wasted. So it just seemed a natural progression. And I think being an entrepreneur, it allows me, it's like, hey, I think I've got an idea here. Let me pursue it and see if there is something here. And then it's just a matter of going to different people that are like-minded, and we start based on that values alignment. And matter of fact, I know both these panelists based on very similar values in different parts of our lives. And so it's I'm not surprised to be on a panel with them.
Excellent. Interesting. There's a in the Q&A post here. This is quite relevant to any of you. Did you start your businesses during the pandemic, right? Did the pandemic help to accelerate what you did? I know Scott had to do a pivot because all of a sudden live events were no more, right? So that kind of zapped a line of business. But could any of you speak to, starting this? Did you start this business? I know, Kelly, you were a little earlier, but what happened during the pandemic for any of you that sort of changed the way you ran your business?
Well, I mean, I started FTA 15 years ago. And then the circularity thing has been around 6 years. I'd say now that we focused on it. I think if anything, COVID has exacerbated some of the issues around waste and overproduction. We saw a lot of excess inventory by the retailers, when everybody basically came to a halt and the economy came to a halt and nobody was buying anything. And then, I think it also gave, pause for most of us to sort of look at our wardrobe and really evaluate it and actually see maybe how much we had that we didn't really need. So I think that there's been some of those sort of behavioral shifts or thinking that's changed, but it hasn't really impacted us as much. It's just basically the work that we're doing means that we've been really having to just do it on Zoom, but it's research and working through a series of workshops. So not so much COVID affected.
Not so much COVID related, aside from adapting your day to day. Scott, I know it did have an impact on your business, right? In many ways, maybe it accelerated a line of business for you.
Well, it's definitely prior to the pandemic, I knew Toronto Public Health fairly well. I had a few contacts there. During the pandemic, I was introduced to the head of food safety for Toronto Public Health, and we've worked very closely to make sure that we've been able to just address any possible safety concerns whatsoever. And they've been very, very helpful with that. And I say we're better because of it. You know, I'm not sure if the focus would have been, I mean, the focus has always been on, is the cup clean or not? And are you following the regulations to clean that cup? But the pandemic also brought up the potential of cross-contamination. And, you know, is the attendant wearing gloves as they collect the bus bin and as they bring it into the back, and all of these different things, these standard operating procedures, it really helped to define what procedures needed to be in place at each location. Again, we're washing at, you know, over 25 locations. So we really need to make sure that the program is quite in line across the board there. And so it's definitely put pressure on us to do that, but it's also given us the time to do that. And yeah, we're definitely better for it. And actually, I would say all reusable programs are better for that. That's not just something unique to us by any stretch. All the reusable programs around Canada's a bit of a hotbed, quite honestly. There's a lot of really good ones. And then in Toronto, especially. But worldwide, reusable programs have been under the microscope during this time. And I think we've benefited from it.
Okay, great answer. There's an interesting question here from Grant that any of you could answer. What strategies are effective when dealing with non-green customers, and in brackets, industry and consumers?
From a consumer point of view, I try to go after more the low-hanging fruit as opposed to trying to convince somebody initially. Like, we sort of tell the story about how we're reusing different things, and it doesn't only appeal to somebody who is environmentally minded. People seem to like the fact that we're just being more efficient. People recognize that we are very wasteful generally. So we're making arguments and marketing along those lines that seem to resonate. And then when it comes to bigger organizations, generally, what we're hoping to do is show that, you know, by sort of taking people into planet into account, that it is not only, it's also financially sustainable model, and just trying to prove a point that way, and just so use us as an example to sort of make the case to big organizations who might only look at it using the profit lens.
Great point. Kelly, I know you were going to layer something in there.
Yeah, I was just going to speak more to industry, because I think there's a whole lot of work that has to be done still with consumers, educating them around, you know, the fact that no textile belongs in the garbage. There's a lot of history there with the way charities have been sort of messaging to consumers about donating only things that are in really good condition and all of that. For sure, they have to be, you know, clean and free of like hazardous materials and dry, but we've been really working hard on behind the scenes and like trying to educate consumers that even the single socks and, you know, the garments with holes in them can be actually, you know, delivered, as long as you're also giving some good stuff, because obviously the charities don't really make anything off of the stuff that isn't good. But and then on the industry side, you know, circularity is a huge buzzword. So I'm fortunate that it's not taking a lot to really convince a lot of brands, and particularly in Canada, I'm seeing it actually emerging as an entry point to sustainability for a lot of them. So that's exciting, I think. And, you know, I think it's also more of a localized problem than, say, Scope 3 emissions, which, you know, it's sort of one of those things where it's like, you know, the garment industry manufactures offshore, out of sight, out of mind, you know, and waste is an issue that we have to deal with right here in Canada. So I think that's another reason to sort of just highlight that to them.
Excellent point. There's a great question by one of our loyal followers that comes to Design Meets and has been a speaker in the past. Hélène Saint-Jacques has a question for Dihan. Given that you don't promote food waste reduction attribute, what is the backstory for consumers? Now, you did kind of answer that. And then following up on that, do the breweries who were involved with spent goods mention this additional application? Like, is that a benefit, a spin for the breweries in your partnership relationship?
Yeah, I think I'll take the second question first, and then you might have to remind me about the first one. But we're working with our partners. One of the reasons, like when I mentioned value alignment, a lot of them are participating with us because they do agree with the philosophy of what we're trying to do and reduce waste together. We are, if at all, their execution engine to sort of enable this, just because what we do is not part of their core competency, nor do they have the time to sort of dedicate towards it. So, but having said that, they do promote us where possible. As a matter of fact, this past weekend, Henderson Brewing, as one of our main strategic partner, had a beer fest in which we were invited to participate without any fees, just so that we could help tell that story. And you know, basically talk about the partnership was the main reason for being there. And so also breweries can actually resell our products. Henderson and other breweries have, when we used to sell crackers, which are a lot more shelf stable, they will sell it, and as part of their packages, etc. Just fresh made baked goods like sourdough bread isn't as easy for a brewery to carry, but if anything long term with a longer shelf life, they're open to, and that our packaging and partnerships with breweries help to sort of promote that story together.
Excellent. Yeah, the first part was just about the food waste reduction attribute, promoting that, and I think you've kind of answered that already.
Okay, great.
That's great. There's an interesting question here, more on experience, and you've all touched upon your experience and even in your bios, but Grace had asked, what kind of experience did you have to break into these fields? Considering how sustainability and the innovations associated with it are all relatively new. How did you enter what can be highly technical field and time away to make meaningful concrete change? I don't know if anyone's, you've kind of all been in and around this space with your presentations, but anyone want to answer that?
I'll just say for myself, I mean, I've had to learn how to be like relentless and just stay on it, because you know, since I started with working in zero waste back in 2012, you know, I'd often get the response, you know, we're never going to be zero waste, right? And it never really never really sat well with me. Like, why? Why do we have to not be zero waste? And so, you know, kind of like being a little unreasonable and seeing what other people are doing and talking to people. You know, I'll speak for the reusables industry. It's a collection of great people who are all trying to do the same thing. We all share information with each other. We all try to help each other out. And I think once you latch on to, you know, something that you're passionate about, and you find other people, they're quite willing to share and help you along the way, give you ideas. But yeah, I mean, and we also had to start small too, right? We started very small. We started just doing events with beer cups. To do. And then, and Ian, at your events, you know, we did beer cups with one of your events. And, you know, it takes those small contracts that slowly grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know it, you know, the federal government is looking at banning certain single-use plastics, and it all kind of works into, yeah.
But it also helps for a consumer to hold something in their hands and question what they're and go, oh, I never thought about that before, or it's a piece of clothing or a laundry hamper, or I'm you know, climate action eating bread. You know, I'm participating by consuming a piece of bread with Dion. Now we just have 4 minutes left, and I just want to ask each of you if you could just sort of do a high level answer this. You know, what do you think from your experience can designers, entrepreneurs, ordinary citizens, what can they do to help drive this circular economy? Anything you can say in a very short manner? 3 minutes.
Kelly, go for it.
No pressure.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, we all have responsibility as consumers, of course. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but I do think that, you know, we it's easy to blame industry, but I think we need to sort of look inward and look at our own habits, our own consumption habits, and then also how we caring for our clothes and what we're doing with them at the end of the day. I think, you know, innovations, new technologies. I think there's a lot of opportunities here in Canada to develop in that area. We're not seeing that so much yet. We're seeing it in now the US, but mainly in Europe. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to sort of either replicate or build on some of the existing technologies that are addressing circularity in fashion, for sure.
So I'd add to that, just as a takeaway, if you're somebody who feels that climate change and local jobs is something that's important to you, just sort of that robustness of those systems in terms of the jobs, and then, you know, reducing climate change, circular economy presents a really good solution in which we can do something about it. We know we need to do something different than what we've been doing before. So all I would say is to explore circular economy. We need to get something like this more to a bigger mass audience. And so everybody on this panel, including there's so many other, several different other solutions out there that sort of revolves around circular economy. So explore those as options and, you know, just start there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll
Scott,
echo both.
30
Just
seconds.
I'll just participate. It just comes down to participating, right? I mean, you're showing that the market is there. You know, if you borrow a cup one time a month, you're showing the system, you're showing the person that you bought the coffee from that this is important to you. And same thing with the spent grains, and same thing with clothing recycling. It's you know, it's important to you, so show it. Participate.
Absolutely. And who can we inspire from this group? You know, there are other Scotts and Kellys and Dehans in this audience and beyond this audience that hopefully will see your examples as a way forward or as a prototype of what I could do. You know,
Exactly.
Maybe they can reach out to Scott or Dehan or Kelly. And Scott, thanks for posting your connection. We are going to do a recap of this. There'll be an edited version and a blog story. We'll try to answer all the questions and post that in a few weeks' time. But thank you to our speakers. Sorry it's so short and sweet, but you know, we've tried to stay in that lunch hour and also between Zoom meetings for people these days. But our next event's going to be on, it's like circular design. How can the design community apply circularity to our thinking, right? It's not happening, but it can happen. DEI, the design community knows this is important. How can we make sure this is part of the way we think, the way we process, the way we design new designs? And then healthcare as service, how healthcare has shifted over the pandemic and become more online and more accessible. So these will be our next events in September and November. But thank you so much to everyone for being here. Thank you to Lauren for running this, and Steve for doing the write-up. I know I probably missed something, but we're already at 1 o'clock, and wonderful to see you. I look forward to trying your bread and seeing your hamper and seeing that pilot, and Scott using your cups at my local coffee shop. Can't wait. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much, Ian.
Bye, everyone. It was good
Thank
to
you.
see you both, Kelly and Scott. Thanks, Ian, Lauren.
You guys are great.
Take care.
Toronto heroes. All right.
Have a good day.
Thank you.